On July 7th, 1944, at 4:45 a.m. on the Tanapag Plain of northern Saipan, Marine Artillery Observer Corporal James Whelan scrawled coordinates onto damp paper. Through his field glasses, he saw what should have been impossible in modern warfare: thousands of Japanese soldiers assembling in the darkness, bayonets fixed, officers raising swords, and the wounded staggering forward on crutches. They were preparing for what would become the largest Banzai charge of the Pacific War. Whelan radioed the coordinates, calling for every available gun. Within minutes, over 20 miles of American artillery tubes, howitzers, long toms, mortars, and naval guns offshore turned toward his grid. The Japanese charge was an act of spiritual desperation called gyokusai, shattering like a jewel. It was a doctrine that prized honorable death over surrender. But the soldiers advancing across that valley were facing not just American troops. They were walking into the most sophisticated fire control network ever built. The Americans had perfected the art of coordinated artillery fire. Forward observers relayed positions by radio to fire direction centers, where crews used plotting boards, slide rules, and weather data to calculate exact firing solutions. Within 90 seconds of Whelan's call, dozens of batteries were ready to fire. Their goal, a time-on-target strike, where shells from guns miles apart would all arrive at the same second. It was a symphony of mathematics and destruction. At 4:47 a.m., the first shells landed. Then came dozens more. The sky erupted as naval gunfire joined the barrage. The Japanese soldiers, advancing in tight formations, were swallowed by explosions. Yet they kept coming. Through the smoke and fire, they screamed, "Banzai!" and pushed forward over the bodies of their comrades. American forward observers calmly adjusted their fire, walking the barges backward and forward across the valley in waves of steel. What the Japanese saw as courage, the Americans answered with calculation. By sunrise, parts of the Japanese force had reached the American front lines. The 105th Infantry Regiment bore the brunt of the assault. Artillery crews who moments before had been calculating trajectories now fought hand-to-hand, removing firing locks from their howitzers and using rifles and pistols. Some gunners even fired their massive weapons point-blank, shells ricocheting into the oncoming waves of attackers. The chaos produced extraordinary acts of heroism. Lieutenant Colonel William O'Brien continued to fight from a jeep-mounted machine gun until he was killed. Private Thomas Baker refused evacuation, dying surrounded by the bodies of those he'd killed. Captain Benjamin Salomon, a battalion surgeon, took up a machine gun to defend his patients, killing nearly 100 enemy soldiers before falling himself. All three would later receive the Medal of Honor. By mid-morning, the Japanese charge had been obliterated. Over 4,000 soldiers lay dead. The Americans suffered around 1,000 casualties, heavy losses, but a fraction of what their artillery had inflicted. 12,000 shells had been fired in the space of 15 hours. The valley was silent, except for the moans of the wounded. The ground was carpeted with bodies. Officers who walked the battlefield later wrote that it resembled a harvest field, with death lying in rows. General Holland Smith would call it insanity, courage wasted in the face of overwhelming firepower. The Banzai charge on Saipan marked the end of an era. The Japanese army, guided by traditions of spiritual strength and sacrifice, had collided with military machine that turned warfare into an industrial process. The American system of forward observers, coordinated artillery, and precise timing represented a new kind of warfare, one ruled by technology, organization, and data. In that valley, courage had met coordination, and coordination had won. The implications went far beyond Saipan. The American fire control system perfected there would become standard doctrine in every modern army. Its lessons echoed through Korea, Vietnam, and into the wars of the 21st century. For Japan, the defeat shattered the illusion that willpower could overcome firepower. Even as the empire continued to fight, Saipan proved that bravery without technology was suicide. The very idea of the Banzai charge died there, a tragic relic of an older age. When the smoke cleared, the survivors on both sides were left haunted by what they'd seen. Many Americans struggled to reconcile victory with the horror of such efficient killing. "There is no glory in what we did," one officer wrote. "We killed thousands of brave men who never had a chance." The Japanese soldiers who died on Saipan fought with extraordinary courage, but their sacrifice achieved nothing. Their commanders, blinded by ideology, had sent them to die against a machine that could not be stopped by human spirit. In that narrow valley on Saipan, the world witnessed a final collision between two philosophies of war. The Japanese believed that spiritual strength could overcome material disadvantage. The Americans believed that coordination, technology, and overwhelming firepower would always prevail. On July 7, 1944, those two beliefs met, and the outcome was decided forever. Courage without technology was no longer enough. The Banzai charge died on Saipan, and in its place was born the cold, calculated warfare of the modern age.